gentlemen, boys and girls, here we go again for another fantastic ride. We're excited that you are here with us, you guys.
It's always a ride.
It is always a ride every single week. This week, you guys, we're going to have a fun one for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, about this time, I start, saying weird stuff and singing awesome songs and
just nonsense.
Just, basically, I make it long. I like I give something to the audience. Yeah. But this week, you guys, we are going to tighten it up because we have another special guest for us this week, you guys. So, as we always do every week, we got to tell you who we are. My name is Andy Diaz.
And I'm Gabe Martinez.
And together, we're a podcast called Who Let You Watch That? Each week, you guys, we are examining the trauma of youth through movies. And this week, you guys, we have somebody that's going to share that trauma and that experience with us, you guys. I'm excited for it.
We do. Andy, there's no time for new business. We're jumping right
I don't have any anyway.
Okay, good. Me neither. All right. I'm going to introduce this incredible human being. How do I introduce him? Okay. I'm going to just start. I'm going to start in a place that everybody's familiar with. You've heard of Beethoven. Trash. You've heard of Mozart. Garbage. It's just terrible. It's
overrated.
Terrible. Overrated. Yeah. Chopin. Show who? Garbage. That's show him to the door because we need to get rid of him. We have an actual composer. Someone who is, for all the jokey silliness that we have said, in all seriousness, a true hero of mine.
Yes.
The man is one of the founding fathers of progressive metal. Like, so incredibly important. I mean, I'm wearing the shirt right now. I mean, you can't hear. You should be able to hear that I'm wearing the shirt. If you're not watching this, you should just know. He's the founding member of Cynic. We've got so much musical majesty has come from this brilliant mind. We've got Aeon Spoke. We've got, honestly, Cynic is you're still doing it, man. Ascension Codes. Yeah. Holy crap, is that incredible. Just beautiful. We're going to get into it tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Paul Masvidal. So spooky.
Great
Paul,
to be here with you guys, man.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for I just never, it was so not expected. You know what I mean? Like, I never get a message like that. It was like, do you want to do, this is our podcast. This is what we talk about. I was like, that's cool. It's different. And I rarely get to do things like this. So I'm grateful you reached out.
Well, thank you very much. We are so very grateful that you responded. And I've actually, it's funny. You seem to be on like a podcast tear right now. Like I've heard you on so many, and it's rad. You have so many incredible stories, and especially about the early Florida scene. And it's incredible. Everyone, if you're not familiar, because we have a lot of listeners that may or may not be aware of heavy metal and just heavy music in general. You definitely have to just go on iTunes and look up Paul's name. He's been on a half dozen podcasts now, and the stories are incredible. They're great. You absolutely got to check them out. But yeah, I thought it would be fun, dude. Like, as much as I want to just sit and talk to you for 700 hours about everything you've ever done musically, I thought Paul's like such a rad dude. And, I follow you on Instagram, and you're so multifaceted. And I was like, this guy's gotta have a story. He had to watch something that messed him up as a kid. He had to have. Come on. So thank you, man, for responding. And boy, oh boy, you've got a movie for us to talk about tonight. We don't want to give it away. We have a fun little feature that we do here, and that is, Andy, why don't you tell them what we do?
Yeah, so Paul, each week, either Gabe, if he brings it, or I bring it, or our guest, we always ask them to describe the movie we're about to talk about in 5 words or less. Paul, are you up to the challenge?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Paul, what do you got for us, my friend?
5 words is tricky. I could say most frightening movie ever made.
There we go.
Most frightening movie ever made. We've got it. We got it.
There
it is. What is the most frightening movie ever made? Andy, tell us.
I know what it is. It's The Exorcist.
The Exorcist!
The 1973
masterpiece.
Masterpiece.
Absolute masterpiece.
Just horror classic, man.
Yeah. you have no street cred if you like horror films, thrillers, cinema. If you haven't seen The Exorcist, dude, where have you been? So it was directed by William Friedkin.
William Friedkin, 1973. Logline reads, when a teenage girl is possessed by a mysterious entity, her mother seeks the help of two priests to save her daughter. Perfect logline. Sometimes we get nonsense with weird sort of stuff, the side quest or whatever in the movie.
Right.
To the point, we got the meat right there, boys and girls.
Absolutely.
And it's a trip how it was a novel, like a best-selling novel, right?
Yes.
Bill Blatty and like
Bill Blatty.
Yeah, and like it was basically considered, I guess it was printed as fiction, but like apparently the story goes by the priest, because there was a story that Friedkin tells where he talked to the priests who did the exorcism that the novel was based on, and he said it was real. And that's what makes the whole thing like, whoa, like, like the priest had a real experience and told this to Friedkin, because I guess that it was that book was from the 50s or something. And the actual movie. So it took like 20 years for it to kind of be made from when it came out. But
yeah, it was an arduous labor of love.
Seriously, God, no, hearing Friedkin tell the story of the casting, like because the studio had very specific ideas for what became, Ellen, right? Chris or whatever. And it was like every person that didn't work out, it was very specific, crazy stories in terms of why they didn't work out,
Yes.
And like Jane Fonda, was like, she was like super rebellious in Vietnam. And like, she was like, I'm not doing this Hollywood trash, but to me, it's like that movie was so not trash in terms of like a cliche. It was so envelope pushing and edgy and horrifying. I mean, it was just and repulsive and disgusting. I mean, it was, gnarly shit,
Yeah. You're so right. It's like the old Hollywood system sort of backing this cult weird thing that they would never do. It's like it was this anomaly.
I mean, it points to like Friedkin's genius, because he was just like so ahead and so envelope pushing and so like, I mean, doing things that no one would do, right? And even how each person, like, getting, because he apparently even ending up with Linda Blair, Reagan, that was like a journey of hundreds of auditions of girls, young girls, teenagers, and then he kind of gave up.
Yeah.
And like she shows up with her mom one day, like in his office or something, right? And it was like,
yes.
And
he was at the end of his rope and was even considering like, well, we're gonna hire like maybe a little person and she's gonna just play a young girl. Like that's what we're gonna do. I guess that's all we can do. Yep. And then here comes Mrs. Blair with her daughter, and she's like, hey, you got to see my kid. Her agent even overlooked her. So Linda's agent was submitting 30 other girls and never submitted Linda.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And Father Karras, like, I guess he was like a milkman from like fucking upstate New York or some shit, right? Like he was like a playwright, but also like just kind of, and he was a little dude, I guess. And like Ellen didn't want a little dude. She was like, the money shot is like, the story goes that the money shot, or one of the main shots where she falls into the arms of the priest. It's like, how can I fall into the arms of this little dude? Like she wanted a leading man,
Right.
And they had cast that guy, Stacy Keach or something. I can't remember. It was like, they had somebody else cast and, but what's his name? Jason Miller, like basically like went to, to Friedkin and said, you have to like, it's meant to be, and I guess Ellen Burstyn too. It was like, it's meant to be like, this is my role. And it was like kind of just all these serendipitous events, right? That led to like.
Yeah. and how, you know, cursed the production was. I mean, we're talking about a lot of names. Andy, do you want to rattle off just a few more of the cast of characters?
Yeah, I mean, you already mentioned Ellen, you know, playing Chris. We got Max von Sydow playing Father Mirren.
Yeah.
There's just this movie has just so many great character actors too that are just fantastic. Jason Miller is. He was awesome in this movie.
He did a great job.
And he had no past. Like Jason and Linda were like not trained actors with no history. They were just like green, you know. Ellen was the only person with some, and she wasn't even that big of a name compared to the people they wanted. So it was, it almost seemed like doomed or something, you know.
Yeah,
from the get-go, right?
Definitely.
I mean, that's the theme of this movie. It's just kind of this cursed sort of production, and just the entire thing just.
Yeah, like apparently the set burned down at one point.
It's this. Yeah, the entire production was just like bewitched. You know, from day one, you had, you know, I think it was like a half a dozen people affiliated with the film lost their lives during the course of production or pre-production, and almost all of them in very like strange circumstances. And you're like, huh? It wasn't like, oh yeah, you know. Old age, or, you know, or
like tragic sort of stuff like throughout it.
Exactly. It's like that's wild. And even who was it? Some televangelist said when the movie came out, he was like, "There's a literal demon living in the celluloid."
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. You know?
Yeah, and
that all fed into the movie itself too. Just that sort of cultness of this evil, despicable sort of movie and everything. You know, it's a scary movie, but it's also. It's this evil sort of thing.
It's an evil movie.
It is. It's so sinister.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you know what I'm remembering now is that Jason Miller said, please give me an audition, even though Friedkin was like, I've already got somebody. And he's like, just please let me. And he goes and auditions for him. And Friedkin even was like, not that impressed. But then he saw the audition tape the next day and said he was like, the perfect, like the camera loved him. It was like he was perfect for it. And then he realized this was the guy, you know. It was like
that's such a ballsy move too. It's
totally.
Like I don't care that you have someone, like this is my role. I gotta do it.
It's awesome. I feel like that must happen today, but just the 70s of it all. It's like it feels more authentic to the period, you know.
Yeah, totally. Like, it definitely has that era to it.
Yeah.
It just you can't picture, especially him, man. You can't see anybody else as Father Karras. Like,
no,
that is it's Jason Miller. There's no other way around it.
Yeah. Like Linda Blair is Reagan. Like,
yes, you
see those shots. I mean, at the end when she knows Marin's coming, and it's just like the scared eyes that are just haunting, peering into your soul. I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself. I know we're going to talk about it, but like, oh my gosh, like. Yeah, you can't imagine anyone else. The wild thing that I read was Friedkin wanted, or he didn't want it, but the studio wanted Brando. They wanted Marlon Brando to be Father Karras.
Right.
And he was like, no, because then it's a Brando movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's also, Friedkin did The French Connection, so, you know, he had a lot of cred. But to be able to say to the studio, like, no, I'm not taking the biggest star ever.
Yeah, he stood his ground, man. He did what he wanted to do, which again points to like how visionary he was.
Yeah.
And how he really like went out of his way. Like he went to Iraq and there was a fucking war in Iraq and shit. Like it was to do those prologue scenes and stuff. It was like, wow. Like they were like, you can't go to Iraq. Like Warner Brother was like, it's impossible. And he was like, I'm going to Iraq. You know?
I mean, like, don't worry, I'll go through England and have an all British crew. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine.
I know, exactly. And then also like shooting in Georgetown, Washington, which I actually went to when we toured on the first Focus tour opening for Cannibal. We ended up in, you know, we like somehow I guess we did a DC show, and we were taken to the steps where what's his name got pushed out or whatever and died.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember getting a piece of slate like from the tile of the steps and shit. I mean, it's probably in a box somewhere in my storage. But it was just like I was so nostalgic to kind of be there for that moment, you know.
Yeah. And that's especially if you were there with the guys from Cannibal Corpse. Like, that's such a metal thing to do, you know.
Yeah, it was a metal. I mean, because it was such a metal movie too, you know.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but there's like maybe 100 references that are in various formative albums. You know,
I mean,
I don't know.
And
the movie, I guess it premiered it around Christmas, right? It was like in the 70s or something, and like amazing, you know.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, amazing timing. It was banned in certain cities, banned in certain countries, so they would, the studio would pay for these buses, and they'd have these Exorcist tours. Mm-hmm. So they'd go to a city where it was banned, load up the bus, and take people over, and just turn it into a big publicity stunt.
And it worked.
Amazing.
It's the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time if you adjust it for inflation.
Wow. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. And like there was a whole. I guess there's videos now out there, but from back then, of reactions, people coming out of the theater sick, puking, they were so fucked up by it, you know.
Yeah.
No, it's nuts. I mean, it's the first mainstream movie that I was able to find that had, it's weird to even say it, but like subliminal messaging, where it had like the quick cuts where, that
the ghost, was in one frame, and it's like,
whoa, what did I just see?
Dude. Totally.
Yeah. To the point that there's like 9 versions of this movie floating around because they had to re-edit it. They had, certain theaters wouldn't carry it. The MPAA was like, well, no, it's going to get this rating unless you do this. It's wild.
Just amazing. I even heard that Friedkin did a voiceover. He had to redo some of the original voiceover actress lady that did Reagan's possessed voice. He had to redo some of her stuff for the CBS airing because there were some lines that were just not going to be cool for CBS.
Yeah.
And he had kind of just did it on his own, copped the voice and stuff, because it was I know it's pretty wild, but that lady's voice, it was a woman who apparently he cast, who was a voiceover actress who, man, that's a crazy story. I mean, I don't know if we want to get into that now or later, but that's pretty wild. Her whole thing, man.
Dude. We can talk about it because I think once we get to your story of seeing this and then the rewatch, I think we're going to be flowing. So,
all right,
let's get to that.
Yeah, no, she apparently was busy working voiceover lady, and he had heard her voice, and she was perfect because he says she was not male or female. You just couldn't tell gender. Mm. And very neutral kind of voice. But she kind of apparently after reading the script was like, if I do this movie, just so you know, I'm in the program, I'm AA, and I'm going to have to drink. And I'm going to have to get raw eggs. And so basically they strapped her to a chair, literally buckled down, and gave her raw eggs and fucking Jack Daniels.
Yes.
To get that voice. And she was just with the mic right up to her, just to kind of, and reading the lines. And it was she just totally went into complete, gave up her sobriety just to become this devil,
let the demon win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she's just man. She herself had to be possessed to do this.
She had to be possessed herself, man.
Right. Which blows my mind, dude, because I read that as well, and I was like, that is next level. Nowadays, you would just record, your mother sucks cocks in hell. And then with Pro Tools or GarageBand or whatever, you'd tweak it and it would sound more demonic than anything. But back then, they were like, okay, and here it is, 0 effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the other thing she said was she wanted 2 priests in the room when she cut her shit. She wanted, and so it was can you imagine this drunk lady drinking eggs and Jack Daniels with 2 priests hanging out, and she's busting out these lines.
Yeah.
And I think part of the terror is that it's an organic human voice. It's not this processed, although I will say, like, I remember the first time I saw really processed stuff like in horror was Saw, and that was some gnarly shit, like some of those voices.
Yeah, especially in like the Dolby and everything, just like you're enveloped with it. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, incredible. The organic, raw, like it just points to how the power of that, how things are like when they're very real, it speaks to us in a way that's, speaks to our humanity, that we're still humans.
Yeah.
And it's so we connect to it more. We can tell it's a real human rather than like some processor,
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like on some level that's speaking to us. And I think too, like, cause I mean, we'll get into your story, but like, I first saw it as a teenager and was not a father. But your heart goes out to this child and this mother. And you're like, it's heartbreaking. So it's on one side, on one hand, it's amazing, and you're like, what am I seeing? It's terrifying. It's gross. It's disgusting. And then also your heart's breaking because you're like, oh, dude, this is a little girl whose life is over, basically. Like.
My friend Chip described it as a cold bucket of holy water in the face of a pubescent girl. I mean, that's basically, you know what I mean? She was like this. It was just so. Like she was basically, and you're led to believe she's gonna die, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like,
right.
Yeah, it's haunting, man. It's just so haunting.
Yeah.
That was a great overview, but Paul, I mean, those were just the little amuse bouches. Okay, we need the main event. All right, I reached out and you were so gracious to respond, and you're like, how about The Exorcist? I've got a really scary story. Or maybe you said freaky story or something like that. But it was definitely, you're like, I've got a story. Paul, we got to ask. Please tell us the story of who let you watch this.
Well, first I will say, I'll preface this with, I wasn't raised in a religious home. So I didn't have like that, any of that terror that people have if they're born with like Bible fear and all that. Yeah. Like I remember having those friends, and it was like, I felt bad for them because they had this weird other layer of fear that was put on by a religious view, just like God, devil mythology, which, children, if they're raised with that, this movie could take on a different thing, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I didn't have that. I was, I had a different kind of upbringing. So I wasn't like, my terror really came from just the sheer horror of the film, the actual, just how terrifying the whole story was. I mean, it's just an incredible story, that's just rips you apart, and as a child, I mean, I think I must have seen it it was the late 70s. So I was, like fucking 7, 8, like I was young, man. I know. And it was, my mom had one of her best friends at the time who she still, I found out, is in touch with, which is amazing, because I was like, is he still like alive? What's going on with him? His name was Duan. And he used to come and just hang and stay at our house. He was just one of my mom's like homies, like one of her best friends. She had like male best friends that she wasn't like hooking up with. Like they were her bros,
Yeah, for sure.
And this guy was just super cool. I remember we were just like, we were just friends. He was one of my childhood friends from my and I remember him just saying, we're going to watch a scary movie tonight, and we had this like room in the back, like it was like a living room in the back of this house that just like it would get dark and had a vibe, you know what I mean? There was just like windy, like trees outside with wind blowing, because we were in Miami and it was like by the ocean, it's like, it was just had a certain element, although it was probably to like someone who, I had to create the environment because, you're in the Caribbean essentially down there. Right. It's gorgeous. As a child, you put this movie on when you're, 7 years old, and with my mom's friend, and, so basically, I mean, the thing that really, and the story isn't that like deep in that there's not a lot of layers to it other than this, in that as the movie was unfolding, he starts to tell me that he had a family member who was going through the same thing in real time. So
what?
he was like, this is real. I have a family member that is going through this very thing right now. He's telling me this. I'm fucking 7 years old, you know?
Oh no!
So I'm like, holy shit. And I believed in magic and esoteric things. But I was just like, wow, you know, like this is real, you know?
Oh shit.
And he wasn't, and this is why, like, I tried reaching out to him because I thought, I want to kind of find out the story of what happened with this. Like, was he just trying to scare me?
Yeah.
Right.
Or did this really happen, like, for him, you know? And I think it probably did, knowing him and how I remember him. He wasn't like a prankster or anything, you know? He was pretty dry and direct with me. So I'm like thinking, damn, man, did like that. So, you know what I mean? And and so, and I like, it wasn't until years later that like my view, you know, because I still like, I wonder about these kinds of things like possession. It's like, well, in shamanic view, it's almost like there is this idea that an apparition or some rogue energy can enter a different body. And actually that's the cause of a lot of addiction and mental illnesses and stuff like that. So you can, like, if you get into the magical view of rogue spirits and stuff, something, maybe possession exists. Or, you know, a real scientific Western view would be, it's just mental illness. This is person sick, but then shit happens that you can't explain. And then it makes you think, well, what is this telekinesis? The mind can move things. The mind, like, is this the power of the mind at work, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
But I was like, from hearing from him, you know, in real time, this unfolding of this family member and him, like, you know, as scenes were happening, saying, yes, that happened, you know, this is going on. I'm like, holy shit. And so I was kind of wrecked. I mean, I remember, I mean, just nightmares and terror. And I was like fucked up by it, to where, I mean, I don't remember like saying, Mom, come sleep with me, or running to my mom's room. But I do remember really being affected and thinking about it constantly. Like, I was really kind of, it added this other dimension to reality as a child. You know what I mean? Everything's already trippy and shit as a kid. And it was just like, wow, fucking demons possess people, you know?
Right.
And what's interesting and funny is that by the time I was 13, 14 and getting into death metal, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And getting turned on to bands like Possessed, you know, I had a song called The Exorcist. I mean, I was like, this is cool, you know? And I was like, and I went through a whole phase. I just remembered now, you know, before we started speaking, like, that I remember Sean Reinert and I, my drummer, when we were kids, we actually wore inverted crucifixes. Like when we were like 14, we were just like total fucking metal. It was just like, And I remember like literally being 14, 15 years old, walking around, you know, the streets of Miami, and we crossed some like church, and we were wearing our inverted crosses, and we spit on the church. I mean, we were just like, and this was, I'm sure, informed by The Exorcist. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, and that's where it kind of tethers into this like metal thing. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, it's so punk. It's such a punk movie. It's so fuck you and so aggressive and brutal. It's like,
for sure, man. It's like, this movie is like I love black metal, and this is like a prerequisite. It's like, anyone who's going to do black metal, you have to watch this movie, you know?
I know, exactly. Bathory and all that early black metal, Venom, of course, you know, like, that's the roots of it. They had like the Lucifer face on the cover and stuff, you know?
Right.
It's interesting to see, like, I never thought I'd see the day where like hipsters are wearing Bathory shirts and they don't even know who the band is. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing. Like, good for Bathory. I mean, that they're selling some merch, you know. I know Corthon's no longer with us, but maybe the family or something, you know.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah. So anyways, it was really, and I, as I mentioned, I tried to reach out to him before we talked because I wanted to kind of talk to him and but now I'm thinking maybe it's good that I'm having this weird childhood memory of it in this vague way, and that I don't have absolute clarity, and I'll probably get it and report to you guys later because I want to know now.
Yeah.
What he was telling me, but it was the impact of seeing the film and not walking away saying that was just a movie, but I got to walk away and say, this shit happens in real life, and it happened to somebody I know. That was my story,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, my dear friend, my mom's bro. Yeah, it's happening in his family, so it's basically my family.
Yeah. Basically, it was like an extension in a sense, and so in the eyes of a child, it definitely took it to another level, and I wonder if to some degree it did inform my musical choices in my teen years and my rebellion and my angst, because I was like, this shit's real, fucking possessions, devils, And I mean, but I remember wearing my inverted cross. It was more of a statement of, it was more of a fuck you to the system. Because I remember hearing about how the church was corrupt and all this stuff. And there was a lot of fucked up things going on with the church. And I was like, fuck the church. I mean, I was a punk, I mean, this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to say fuck you to all these systems, that are
traditions,
belief
everything.
systems.
Everything.
Right?
Yeah.
It's and think for ourselves and speak our minds, and it's kind of healthy, I think, for a child to kind of enter that, space on their own terms, as long as they don't become self-destructive,
Right.
Which I did at some point too. I got, I had waves of depression, and I really was encountering my own inner demon, which really, I think at the end of the day, even thinking about this time of Halloween, which is, this weekend's the big weekend, it makes me think in an astrological view, this is a time to do inner work and to reflect, to look at the shadow, to look at those aspects of your psyche and of yourself, to meet those aspects. And so I sit there and I think, wow, very cool. I was basically trying to meet my own inner demon. And really, it's funny because you were asking what books I'm reading. One of them I'm rereading. It's called Feeding Your Demons. Mm-hmm. And it's a Buddhist book. It's written by a lady named Tsultrim Allione. And it's a practice. It's a meditation visualization practice where you visualize whatever it is that's causing you distress in your life sitting in front of you. And you almost can put a chair in front of you, chair to chair, and see what apparition appears in your mind. And then you proceed to like feed it. So you're kind of befriending this thing that is normally shied away from or stuffed under, you know, like most people who are dealing with addictive issues or even forms of illness are not wanting to look, right? It's like you're not.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like the worst thing that you could do is visualize that. So embracing that, that's really cool, man.
Yeah. It's like you're making friends with this demon, you know, you're trying to make friends with Reagan. And Reagan fucking, it looks like Reagan, man. It's a rough one to meet, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely don't want to be across the chair from that one, you know?
No. Dude.
Okay, so many things, man. First of all, the book sounds super amazing. I got to hit you up afterwards. I would really like to check that out. It sounds not a lot, but it sounds similar in some ways to Rational Recovery. I've got a buddy who's a recovering addict, and Rational Recovery was one of the things that he tried, and one of the, instead of like the 12-step thing or, you know, acknowledging a higher power or anything like that, it's like you visualize your demon. You visualize, you confront it, and once you have and you fully realized it, then you're like, cool, that's not me. I'm better than that. I don't need to do it. So it's interesting. I'm like forever interested in that. And I think to like a much lesser extent, it's like it is kind of interesting. We get to do that sometimes on the podcast. We talk about these things that a lot of times being silly and fun, but we're like, oh man, like heavy shit comes out sometimes, and you're like, whoa, it was just a movie, but like in your case, man, like, if you didn't grow up in a religious household and you're sitting and you're seeing this kind of for the first time, and Duan, you said?
Yeah, Duan.
Yeah. And Duan is like telling you that this is real, basically, that you're saying. Had you been introduced to the concept of like the devil or demons at that point? Do you remember?
Not really.
No. Man.
See, that's
That's
I mean,
extra.
other than like through friends that were in religious homes, what I mean? Like, and whatever I had picked up or from other movies or stuff, but no, I had none of that, like in terms of like a church or something or a priest talking, you know what I mean? Like that wasn't in my, vernacular in terms of like my scope or my narrative view as a child. It wasn't like, but then it really came in. And, you're making me think too, like probably part of that success of The Exorcism. I mean, you never know what makes these movies tick, but it's like, if you think about all of us being collectively connected and being essentially one organism, like, the movie embodied this like collective shadow, right? It like held all of everyone's fear in this film, and it was like, so it resonated. Everyone was like meeting their demon. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it had like held that space, and it gets me thinking about things in a different way, even about the film. Like, wow, maybe that's why it was so successful, because it was so honest in that sense, just so kind of brutally honest.
Yeah, I think whether you have like the religious background or not, you hit it on the head, brother. Like, we all have, like it or not, we all have some darkness in us, and we're not as perfect as we'd like to be all the time. So I think it's shocking to see that, and what better way to illustrate that than a little girl, like the definition of innocence, this cute little carefree girl, and it's like, oh yeah, she's now the devil,
Yeah, powerful story.
Yeah, it is. Well. So normally here, we would get into kind of like, when we saw it for the first time. I mean, Andy, do you got a 2-second version of like when you saw it?
The only thing that I was really going to bring up, I mean, we've talked a lot about my dad on this podcast, where my dad would let us watch literally everything, Paul. My dad would let us watch we grew up in the 80s, so it was just always Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger action movies, and my dad didn't care. It was just like, these are fun action movies. You can watch as much violence as you want. This was a movie that my dad kept me away from, like, because my dad grew up religious, so he was just like, no, mijo, like, you don't want to watch this. Like, the devil's out there. Like, this is scary. So I was just going to bring up that in typical Andy fashion, my very first experience with The Exorcist is a Leslie Nielsen parody movie called Repossessed. And that's how I got introduced to The Exorcist.
Oh.
And then on the back end, discovered it probably when I was like, a teenager and everything, like, oh, this is badass and everything. But, probably about 10 years old, I saw a comedy one with Linda Blair, as like an actress now, with Leslie Nielsen making fart jokes and everything. So
there were so many spin-offs and
so
things
many.
and
so many parodies.
That's cool that your dad was like at least let you kind of see anything. Like that's how my mom was. Like it was a very like anything goes, you know what I mean? You just like, you can see whatever you want,
That's how it was. And maybe I shouldn't have been watching, as me and my brother, our favorite movie growing up was like RoboCop, and it was just like, we saw that when we were like about 7 years old, and it was like, what are we doing here? But it makes for fun stories now, and now we get to do the podcast. And everything.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
We've got just fodder for days.
Okay, what about you, man? Anything that you want to quickly jump into?
I have two really short stories. The very first time I became aware of this movie, I was probably around your age, Paul. Like I was probably 7 or 8, and I was with my uncles. A lot of times my parents worked, so during the summers I would spend almost the whole summer at my grandparents' place. And my grandma, God love her, she was like babysitting a bunch of neighborhood kids and stuff. So we were able to do whatever. And my uncles, who were all older, like 4, 6, and 8 years older than me, they were all heavy metal dudes. So like I was listening to King Diamond when I was like 6, and they were scaring me with like them and stuff. So they were watching The Exorcist. I was playing with like G.I. Joes, and I'll never forget. One of them was like, "Oh, hey, dude, like check this out," and I like turned to the TV, and it was when she's masturbating with the crucifix, and I was like, "What?" Like my head like exploded. I was like, "What? This is scary. This is terrible." I was so in my little world, like G.I. Joe fun, and I see this, and I'm like, "No,
what is that?"
And I ran out of the room, and I didn't see it. So I didn't see it proper until I was probably like 16 when they did the director's cut 20th anniversary release thing or whatever it was.
That's amazing though, like that to witness that scene first, because if I was going to bring that one,
no context, no anything,
especially just as a little kid, like of all the scenes, like
they were like, "Oh dude, check this out," and I was like, "Huh?"
That is one of the
give me the vomit or something like I know that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, she went for it, man.
She did.
It's rough, man.
She did.
It's rough.
It is a travesty so the Academy, they nominate her, and then they go, well, because there was the voice actress that did, the voiceover, basically, like, we can't take it away from you, but you're not going to get the award. There's no way you're going to get it. And I just think that's asinine. It's like that little girl was working her ass off.
She crushed it, man.
Yes, becoming a possessed person. Anyway, Linda Blair's forever immortalized and has received her accolades for sure. But I know at the time I was like, what? Oh, this is insane. So
yeah, it's incredible. Her whole life became defined by that film.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly, man. Exactly. Well, thank you. I mean, you did our job for us. You told us the story, but you also told how it continued to potentially affect you and carry on. It is really interesting, though, everybody. So if you're not familiar with Paul's musical work, hear the story that he told and picture like the angsty teen with the upside down cross, just up to no good, and then go listen to Ascension Codes. It's not what you're expecting.
I've come a long way.
Exactly.
It's been a long, hard road, bro. Yeah. Let me tell you, man. No, it's funny. It reminds me of like when I was in elementary school, like writing lyrics and stuff. And I was always working on like little songs. And I had an English teacher named Miss Adams who I loved. And I would show her my lyrics. And this was like Cynic demo days, like early days. And, I was writing a lot of like political angsty stuff, very kind of punk crossover stuff, just like at war with the world and society and just trying to make all the wrongs right. And I remember she turned to me one day and she goes, one day you're going to be singing about love. And I was like, what?
You don't understand me.
But I was a little bit like, I couldn't even imagine that. Do you know what I mean? Like I was angry. Oh, yeah. I was in so much pain. I was so pissed and so fucking raging as a child, in those years. And I thought, wow, like she saw something, that I couldn't see. And I thought it really moved me, it was like, oh man, she saw my heart, she saw something. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's funny because I hear Ascension Codes and I'm like, this is fucking heavy, but I realize like in the face of like what's going on in metal these days, it's like, it's really just more ethereal and it's not really that heavy in a traditional sense. It's a different kind of heavy, right?
Yeah, yes. I agree with you. I'm also not impartial. I love everything you do. So, like hearing that, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is incredible, and it's just so nuanced and I mean, yes, it's ethereal, but in such a heavy, weighty way, in the best way, So
atmospheric.
But it's definitely. it's definitely not, we what is it? We eat the vomit of the priests. It's not Venom.
Yeah. I mean, I never went down that road. It was funny, like even like, by those later demo periods, like other than like the political angst, like I realized I never did the gore lyrics or the religious type of concepts or anything like that. It was always more skewed by other things. But
even the Death album that you played on, dude, like, there's very little, if any, of that.
Oh no, that was the beginning, really. I mean, Spiritual Healing was the beginning, but really that by Human, he was really trying to tell the more psychological stories. It was really about the mind rather than like gore and horror. He had grown out of that. But I don't know. I mean, it's not something necessarily you grow out of. Some people stay engaged in this stuff for the rest of their life, and it becomes a real art form in a beautiful way, right? It's like, I mean, I have some homies in LA who are just like horror fucking geniuses, and it's like their life, like, and they just geek out on it so hard. And I like I love that,
Yeah.
It is a lot of fun to have the people in your life that are that way, because I do love horror, but I mean, our episode last week we're talking about Hereditary, and we're both talking like as dads, almost weeping, like, it breaks my heart, like it's so sad, So I have an appreciation for it, but I'm definitely finding in my old age, like, there's something to Miss Adams talking about love.
Yeah,
yeah, there is.
Finding that level of peace and, I don't know, almost serenity a little bit,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it really drives existence, at the end of the day. It's like it's at the root of everything, but we have to kind of peel back a lot of layers to get to that essence, to get there to that kind of root form, without all that other. Yeah. Although, it's funny, like they say, like, in a lot of Buddhist view, it's like they'll say children, are kind of like, in terms of a reincarnational view, they'll say children are born with already like fully programmed. And I don't know if you've noticed this with your own kids, where they have like full personality before they've been observing you. Like they just have a whole thing going on.
Yes.
And they say that's just comes in from their past. Like they brought that with them. And some kids come in angry, some are really chill, some are, kind of like stubborn, some are really gentle. It's like there's these inherent characteristics that are already there before you've even laid a hand on them, right? It's interesting.
Incredibly interesting. Yeah, I definitely noticed that sort of stuff with my own boy, and it's just like it's reflections of me, but it's also completely his own, and it's incredible to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the more he's around you, the more he'll start mirroring, because he's hanging with you now, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I mean, what is he? What's he like? Like, if you had to describe him, his personality, how old is he?
Yeah, my little guy, he's 3.5, and he is just nonstop energy and everything, but he's just angsty from whenever he was a kid, and it was just like, he would grab my guitar off the wall, and like I have this great video of him like 2 years old, just like punk rocking out, and it was even before like I really kind of played that stuff around. I'm like, what in the world is this? And him just like
interesting,
yelling into like the hole of the guitar, just like making up lyrics, and I'm just like, what is this? And it's just like, all right, dude, okay. Fight against the machine. I love it.
Trip. So, and he's 3 and a half now. Wow.
He's rambunctious. He's a very active boy. He's an outside kid, which I love. And it's just that's what he wants to do. I'm gonna get dirty and just make a mess of life and do it.
Oh, cool. He wants to get his hands in the dirt.
Big time.
That's cool. Yeah. And you have a kid too?
I have 3.
You have 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're all different, but they're all super sweet, artsy weirdos. Like they'll go outside and get dirty, but the boys more than our girl. Like we have twin boys and then an older girl, and they'll all go out and get dirty she'll want to get clean like as quickly as possible. One of the boys wants to get clean as quickly as possible. The other one would love it if he would never have a bath ever in the history of time. He never wants to do that again. But they're all like super sensitive and like really in touch with their feelings, and they just like came that way. I mean, we're a pretty lovey-dovey household, but like, man, they came that way. They're just like really, they talk about how they feel. Like, we didn't teach them that. It was like,
That's
I'm feeling
amazing.
really sad that you're talking to me that way. And I'm like, what? That's so evolved.
Really
like,
cool.
good job, kid.
That's so cool. Yeah, they're your teachers, right? It's like,
right? Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Oh my gosh.
For sure, man. For sure. We've only got a few minutes left, man. I want to make sure that we have in our last 10 minutes that we can talk about this rewatch, because this movie is mind-blowing. Your story is incredible, dude. Clearly, this is an important film. We rewatched it. Let's get into just a couple of notes and thoughts. Anything that just hit you first, Paul, that you might want to share. We just usually kind of just go where the conversation takes us.
I mean, like those key scenes, like the one scene, I'll try and do it.
Oh my god.
You know what I mean? The head.
If you're not watching the video of this, Paul goes and turns away from us and slowly turns around, doing the inverted head deal.
Dude, that moment is like fucking terrifying, dude.
Yes,
it is.
It still is.
That is. I mean, so yeah, I guess most of your viewers, I'm sure, will have known the movie, but there's a scene. I mean, I guess at this point you can give it all right. We're
for sure.
I mean, yes. Yeah, I mean, she literally just like does a full fucking owl head flip.
Yeah.
Like her head turns 360, just like her body stays stationary, and she's fucking full on. It's so, and just her, and this is when she's in full possession mode, right? It's like, and and I think like her, obviously the interactions with the priest, with Jason, I mean, whatever his name was,
Brother Karras,
Jason Miller.
Wow, like,
dude,
when she goes right to talking about his mom, and then later speaking in Greek. Like, that's exactly what you said, Paul. It's like, this movie like speaks to everybody. It's like, there she is showing you. She's like, I know you. I know what scares you. I know what scares you.
Yeah, it's so horrifying, man. It has this, like, it does. The movie has some kind of vibe that's imbued in it that you can't manufacture, that kind of thing. It's like what makes art, like, really at times when it touches that. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's that magic powder that just like gets put on it, that's like impossible to manufacture. It just happened. It was like meant to be, and
for sure.
It's why it's so classic and iconic, and pretty much every horror movie since has been informed by The Exorcist, it seems. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, that seems like every 6 months another The Exorcism of so and so, or The Devil and Joe, whatever. Like everything is like,
I know. Like, that actually, what was that one? Emily Rose or something?
Yeah, The Exorcism of
that was a good one.
It really was.
Really, yeah. That one stood up. I remember we saw that all together back in the day when we had ample time, and we would just go to every single movie, and it was what a time.
Emily, and because that was like, I think in the beginning it was like based on true events,
and it's I forget her name, but she's the actress. She plays Dexter's sister. And she's so good.
She's good.
I can't take my eyes off her in that. She's so good.
She's great.
Obviously Ellen Burstyn. I mean, just her, like, she seems so caring as a mother, and she's just showing up for her kid, who's just like, I mean, it's just incredible. And I love another interesting thing was that scene, which I think was really horrifying too, when they're doing the tests on her, and they inject her neck, fucking blood. It's like,
yes. Oh,
dude, just the medicine in the 1970s just being like insanely barbaric. Like, really, what's wrong with your daughter? Let's just take blood out of her neck.
And that guy that played that doctor, actually, I don't know if you guys know about him, but he turned out to be, he was like he's actually still alive, apparently. He was a serial killer in New York.
Yeah.
He was kind of hitting like the S&M bathhouses and stuff. And he was like the Dahmer before Dahmer, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And there he is.
Once there he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Bill Blatty said years later that scene you were talking about with like the angioplasty or angiogram or whatever.
Yes.
He said all of the fainting and the puking with the demonic stuff was bullshit. He was like, that's the scene that people would faint and like lose their lunch.
Right.
Because
we know that, right?
It's so real. Yeah.
It's so real.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How far that was a note of mine. I was like, wow, how far has medicine come today? But also it's still bullshit.
I know.
Like Western medicine is still like
we're gonna figure it out.
I know.
Your insurance doesn't know.
Well, whatever.
Yeah, I know.
We can't help you.
It's funny how we're still there. I mean, it's amazing to think where we'll be in 100 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just those doctors too with that poor mom, and they're just like, I don't know what's wrong with her. I don't know. Go see a priest? Sure, why not? Like, you gotta try something else here now. Like,
you gotta try something else. I mean,
like,
she
this
was at
isn't
the end of her
working.
rope.
Like, what is happening?
They're like, well, we could pull more blood out of her neck, and she's like, what the fuck? Like, no, don't do that,
dude. Great call out. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and like even just like obviously, I mean, it's so iconic, but like the makeup, at Reagan and Fletcher, like it was just so horrifying, man. Like her face, and it's that old school 70s makeup stuff too. It's just very real. There's no CGI. Like if that movie was made today, all that shit would have been CGI. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like they wouldn't have let that shit go down like that, like
No, building the fiberglass harness that cuts into her cheeks to house the nozzle for the puke. Like,
right.
They wouldn't ever even consider that today. Or like, poor girl, Linda Blair, like almost breaking her back because they literally had her in this harness that's flipping her up and back and forth.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
You'd never get that. Then you can't physically get those unnatural movements otherwise.
Right.
And I don't want to take away from any actors and stuff nowadays, but you're absolutely right. It would be like, act to the tennis ball, here and go and do it.
I know.
Like, it's just, there's something to artisans with the makeup and everything, there's a lost craft in there,
Yeah. I guess there's some filmmakers now trying to keep it old school, right?
For sure, dude. For sure. Yeah. But it featured a young Rick Baker. He was like, the assistant on this one. It was one of his first gigs, man.
Yeah.
Wild.
That's wild.
I have a lot of nonsense notes, so I'll just share like one or two.
What do you got?
The first 10 minutes of this movie is a short film about a guy afraid of statues confronting his amazing fear, only to then be eaten by wild dogs. Like, if you watch it in the context that it's like an art house brooding slow thing of a guy who's just terrified of statues, it's hilarious. Just FYI.
I know there's that scene where he's standing and staring at the
Pazuzu.
It's like he's meeting the big version of the little head he finds in
Yes. Exactly, and he's just trembling, and then the dogs, and then you just hear dogs and pee and grossness and all kinds of stuff, and you're like, well, where'd he go? I don't see him anymore. Clearly he was eaten by the dogs.
Dude, and it's just, I think Paul was saying it earlier, just like, it just, man, the devil just like, how rock and roll is that whole opening, dude? It's like the dogs fighting. It's like a 90s music video.
It is. It's Slayer's Seasons in the Abyss, where they're playing like the pyramids of Giza, dude.
It's badass.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've listened to Mike Oldfield's the original song, the theme song, Tubular Bells, but like it's like total like kind of. It's like Prague. It's like 70s Prague. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's got this like, it's got the whole like odd time signature, and then it kind of gets more complex and has counterpoint, and it's like this. It sounds like you know what I mean? Like
indeed.
It's so cool, like that but it just in the context, it's one of those things where you can, how it's so interesting how like music, it depending on what you're seeing can sound scary, right? So your eyes will make like very music that isn't necessarily scary sounding, just the context kind of, your brain kind of fills in the blanks and makes it suddenly like, it's so interesting how that can be played with, you know?
Yeah, for sure. That was a note of mine at minute 14. It's like, here comes that theme, baby.
Yeah.
And it's her just walking home, and you go like,
I hate this.
Yeah, I'm terrified. This is awful. Like, everything is bad.
Yeah.
You know? Andy, do you have any like burning ones you got to get out?
The only thing that I got a note that I had that I have to get out there, that vomit, she spits it all on, Father Karras. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's a silly note. My mom used to make this split pea soup, and I always hated it. And the reason I hate it is because as a kid, just seeing snippets of it, it looked exactly like that soup. And my mom would make it, be like, let's eat it. I'd be like, I hate this.
It's vomit, Mom.
It has the same color. Yeah. So I kind of forgot about it for a couple years. And as soon as I saw that, I went, I'm 10 years old, and my mom's serving up split pea soup with like a ham bone in it. And it's just like, no, there it is. I hate this.
Yep.
Yeah. I was the same way with the lentil soup my mom would make that I didn't like. And I remember the only way she could get me to eat it, which is so strange, but maybe it's kind of the Cuban background, she'd put bananas in it. And that's what got me to eat the lentil soup. She'd like put little banana pieces, and it was like, I guess the sweetness or something.
The sweetness, yeah.
She sounds like a great one.
My boy needs some potassium.
Sweet. Yeah,
my mom's rad.
All right. The burning note that I had to get out, which we can end on this as far as our notes. I mean, it is silly, but it's cause for debate. Okay, the film ends with Karras going out the window, right? We know that.
Okay.
And then he goes down the steps. Okay, goes down the steps.
What do you got?
Cut to Father Dyer at the end when he's done. Everyone's they're leaving the house, and he's just kind of walking around, and he goes and he looks at the window, and then he goes and walks over to the Exorcist steps, and he's like 20 to 30 yards between the window and the steps. They have a shot, and they're like, there he is over here, and here's the window over here, and it's like 20, 30 yards. So are we to believe that Father Karras is possessed by Pazuzu, jumps out, bounces 20 yards, and then falls down 75 steps to not to his immediate death, because he's able to get his last rites?
Yeah.
I gotta say, it's a great movie. I call bullshit on that. There's no way he could have done it. You were there physically in real life, Paul. You saw. Maybe it wasn't that far, but it looks like he's like 20 yards away from the window.
He's a young Greek man. He's got hops. He's got distance, dude.
Yeah. That's it. I'm discrediting his virility.
Yeah.
That's it.
He's just
the power of Christ compelled him.
The power of Christ compels him.
It's a trip that place still. I wonder if it's still there. It must be.
The steps?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're
still there. Okay. Yeah, like back then, I mean, it was like you could walk right up to it, This was like, 90s or something, but I wonder if it's like, because it's so iconic,
Right.
Paul, when you went there, was it like a bunch of people hanging out, or was it just like you and the Cannibal Corpse guys?
It was like me and maybe one other Cynic guy and like couple Cannibal guys or something like that. I remember it was like a small group of us that were just like into it, that one, like it wasn't the whole crew,
It's gotta be an ordeal now. I bet if you went, it's like just everyone's getting the selfies and just it's gotta be, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm even like trying to remember, like, was it somebody that we met at the show that was like, I can take you to the Exorcist steps, and we're like, I want to go,
Yeah.
I was like,
hell yeah.
Like, I'm trying to remember the story, but I do remember like I broke a little piece off of that like slate. Dude. It was like this gray slate like rock that was like the steps, and I was like, I got a fucking piece of this,
Yes.
Alex Webster had to be with you, right? Like,
I think so. Yeah. Probably. Yeah. Alex was pretty nerdy.
Yeah. It's like, it sounds like it's up his alley, you know? Well, dude, this has been an absolute pleasure. You know, we're just a few minutes over. I'm sorry. But we always end. Our next thing is just, you know, would you let your kid watch it if you had kids?
Yeah, I think, like, you know, as we had mentioned before, I think it's healthy for a child to explore the shadows, you know, and to kind of like not be afraid, to kind of meet. They need to learn how to meet all that stuff and meet it in a healthy way, like because otherwise it becomes something you're pushing down and not looking at. And it's good to kind of get a kid to look at things like this and see how they can meet it in a way that, you know, have a relationship with it where it doesn't like destroy them. Do you know what I mean? They can.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in the same way that my mother was like completely cool with all that stuff, I think that was good for me. And, you know, it affected me in other ways down the road. Maybe I was pointing to the film, but I think my angst and my depression and all that acting out that was happening was rooted in something else, you know, not having seen a scary movie. It was, but it's like now looking back, it's like having a mother who was so open and free and not restrictive was really good for my brother and I, because we had to kind of, you know, it created an environment where we had to kind of find for ourselves like what worked and what didn't. Like there wasn't this like, this is the way things work, this is the way things are. She kind of kept it an open playing field. Like I remember her taking me to an esoteric bookstore when I was a kid and saying, buy whatever you want. And I bought like a book on magic, like I bought the Satanic Bible. I was trying to be edgy. You know, my mom was like, you know, kind of a new age lady. And I was just like trying to push the envelope, and she was cool with all of it. And I was like, this is so cool that my mom was not trying to shape my mind, you know?
Right.
Just let it grow. That's awesome,
just
man.
let it like be yourself, be creative, explore, figure this out for yourself. This is your journey. You know, I'm just going to hold space for you. You know, I'm like, I love that, you know?
Dude, that's awesome.
That is so cool. And not also like that surprising, because it seems like you had a very, you know, supportive, loving parent that allowed you to be super creative. Because you were doing Cynic stuff, incredible stuff at such a young age, man. Like,
yeah, we started young, man. You know, we did. We were definitely like, I always think about that most of my childhood, even by my early teens, I was just like, rather than going and playing with kids, I was practicing. I was interested in playing guitar. I was just dedicated to like music. And so my childhood, I didn't have a lot of the usual stuff. Like my childhood revolved around, everything was around the music. It was just like everything was related to like either rehearsal or a show, or, you know, like we were just listening to things. It was just like, so definitely like completely swallowed in a musical path, you know what I mean? Like from a young age, and then touring by 18, you know, I mean, and I was touring even in 14, 15, we were getting in like, you know, someone who was 15, 16 in a van, you know what I mean? Like even my first van, like we did a whole tour up the East Coast, you know, to Buffalo, New York. I mean, we were kids, you know, I mean, it was like, and it's crazy to think that, because I know I have some friends who are that young, and I'm thinking, wait a second, like you're too young to go like out in the world now. Like, hold on, you know, like you just, I even have the protective parent for some of my younger friends, but I'm like, no, it's okay. Like they grew up in this world. They know how to navigate. They're paying attention, you know. But I know that I have it with having these younger friends. It's like, and you guys obviously have it as parents full on. It's like that instinct of protection, right? It's
right. Yeah.
Dude.
That's awesome. I love that. I'll let mine watch it too, but I'm thinking more like 10, just because they're 10, 12, because they're so sensitive, you know. Maybe not 7.
But
you don't want to like, because there can be, it puts a lot of weird things in the mind, you know what I mean? It does put some images that can like create it can, if it, especially it sounds like your kids are so sensitive, you know what I mean? Like, could just, like, I mean, it did fuck me up for a while. No, I had some terrible nightmares, and I remember just some really rough things because of that movie. It was like, because it was impressionable at that age. Yeah. So it does make sense to like maybe a window where they can have a little more of a reference point with reality, right? Or something.
Yeah. Just a little more maturity. A little bit, you know. What do you think, Andy?
Absolutely. Kids definitely going to watch it at some point. This movie, though, my wife is still to this day, she did not want to watch this with me. She was like, nah, I'm good. Like, it still scares her. So I think this will be one of those ones where she's going to be apprehensive to let him watch it eventually. But, you know, we love movies in our house, too. Yeah. And like we said earlier, if he's going to be a death metal kid and everything, he's got to do the homework. He's got to watch The Exorcist. So.
He has to. Required watching. Yeah. Anything that you're reading that you want to recommend? Anything, you know, that you want to plug right now specifically?
Well, let me think. Well, I'm reading right now because I'm doing, my friend Jake is having a retreat in Bali. He lives in Ubud. You know, it's in Bali. It's in Indonesia, and he's doing a retreat on creativity and magic. And I'm kind of doing the music side of it as a musician. Wow. And so I've been reading this big book on, it's called The Solitary Witch by, I think her name is Ravenwolf. Is it Silver Ravenwolf or something? She's really cool. She's like she's a really prolific author on like witchery and witchcraft and spells and stuff. So, and I was into that stuff when I was much younger and have been around it my whole life. And so I'm kind of brushing up again on a lot of that stuff just because of it being such part of the language of this retreat too. Like it's the protocol, you know? So that and The Feeding Your Demons, and I'm reading, I'm rereading a Jacques Vallée book. He's like a UFO guy. It's called Dimensions. Yeah, he's really awesome. He was like a scientist guy who got into the whole UFO research stuff, and that's really good. And I just actually got on my Kindle, but I haven't started yet, but I got it because I was inspired by a conversation I had with the Cali Death podcast guys, Isaac Asimov, the foundation. I don't know if you guys know that, but he was like a old school early sci-fi writer.
For sure.
Yeah. And so I was gonna like get back into that just because it's part of my childhood. I was so deep into sci-fi and you know, Philip Dick and just Brad, you know, just all those like writers that just were writing about other worlds. And I think that a lot of that came out, for example, for me with Ascension Codes, it was like this, like the childhood of the trans-dimensional spaces kind of emerged and became realized. Like I was always reaching for that. And I feel like I got it with Ascension Codes, you know? I mean, it was a real ode to my bandmates as well. It was a hell of a journey, you know, making the record for me. And we're releasing, we released on Bandcamp, but now on November 18th, we're releasing an instrumental version of the album on all the streaming sites. So cool. It's like, it's like the whole album without vocals, which is kind of cool to listen to because the album is so dense and layered and kind of packed that you hear it. It completely works as an instrumental record. It's like all there, you know? And you hear a lot of things that you wouldn't hear because you're thinking about vocals and hearing the vocals and lyrics and stuff. So just taking that out, it kind of takes on a whole other, it becomes very soundtracky, you know?
Yeah, I could totally see that. And that's I mean, it's awesome, but your lyrics and the vocals are so important to the music that, I mean, I'm a huge guitar nerd and, you know, the melodies are so complex and your leads are incredible, but you focus on the lyrics, dude. So that's
right. Yeah, you get into like without the words and the vocals, it's like suddenly you're actually going to hear like so much guitar shit that you wouldn't hear. It's just like all these subtle little parts intricate. It's because it's so layered, that those compositions. And I think it's like, I'm psyched to kind of share that with people, because they'll hear, especially the guitar heads, it's just like a feast for the ears, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just basically, I'm doing guitar clinics. I'm actually doing one in San Diego on 11/11, you know, and
nice.
And then I'm doing one in LA at MI, and then I'm doing some stuff in NorCal. Just like kind of, I'm woodshedding a lot right now, just like, because next year is the 30th anniversary of the shirt you're wearing, and we're doing an anniversary kind of memorial tour. You know,
that is so awesome.
Yes.
Oh, we will be there, Paul.
Yeah.
Right on, man. Yeah, I think there's going to be an OC show. So
nice.
Oh, incredible. We'll go all the way to LA or San Diego for you. Don't worry.
Yeah, well, those will happen too, for sure. But I think, like, because it's on the way, you know, it's always good to do a stop. But yeah, that's kind of it. It's just like practicing, and I've got this retreat in Bali in December, which I'll be there the whole month. And you know, a lot of times if I'm not playing guitar or like working on things, I work with orgonite, with resin. You know, I make resin pieces. I don't know if you've seen that stuff, but I sand and polish them for hours after I pour the resin in the molds and do all this stuff. I think I have some pieces here, like these pyramids and stuff, you know. And
it's so cool looking.
Yeah, dude.
They're pretty cool. Like, here's a bigger piece, and I make these weird little alien heads too, but this is like a floating pyramid idea, you know. It's like, it's hard to see, but anyways, it's made with resin, and there's gemstones in it. It's based off these principles of a scientist named Wilhelm Reich, who was like a Tesla of like the 40s and 50s, like kind of a genius scientist who figured out if you put 50% organic and inorganic materials in resin, it produces energy. So it's like they actually produce, and they block electromagnetic frequencies. It's like smart art kind of stuff and jewelry. I make these little pendants. So I spend a lot of time sanding and like polishing and listening to podcasts like a crazy old person. You know? I mean, I'm like, you know, I try and get out. It's nice to be here down in SD County too. It's so pretty down here, you know?
Yeah. It is a different world down there. Well, that's rad,
dude.
That's
rad, man. Yeah.
It's
so just a lot of different things, you know, trying to live life, show up, you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, we thank you for that. Andy, anything?
I mean, Cynic, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Ascension Codes, that's exactly what I want to, you know, do as our recommendation, man. Yeah. It's what came out last year. I mean,
it came out at the end of November of 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, and feel free to guys use any song clips and music if you want for anything.
Dude.
You know what I mean?
You're a king. Thank you, man.
Of course, man. Yeah.
He's been so gracious with his time. I think we gotta end it, Andy.
Yeah.
We gotta do it.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, so nice to meet you and connect, and I'm sure I'll see you around. We'll stay in touch. We're kind of neighbors, right?
Absolutely,
man, right down the way, right?
Yeah, we would love that, man. We would love that. Thank you so much. This was an absolute dream. Thank you, buddy. We love you so much.
And this was
hilarious and great. So thank you for being on.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, be well, brothers.
You too. You too, my friend. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye-bye.
My friends, that was the man, the myth, the legend himself, Paul
Masvidal.
Dude.
Yeah.
What a dude. What a dude.
What a guy. Yeah, that's rad. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, you don't understand. Like, yeah, I mean, we had First Fragment on, and I was really talking a lot about how great they are and how much I love them. And it's like, I don't want to discredit their amazingness, but it's like, I don't know that they would exist without that dude that we just talked to. That's exactly what I was about to say.
You don't get to point to this point now without laying the foundation. You know, that's what he did. He paved the way.
Yeah, exactly. He absolutely did, man. So,
dude, what a cool episode. Different. We didn't hit all the things that we normally hit, but you know what? I love where we hit them.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. It was awesome. It was great.
I mean, do we just get out of here now? This is a different sort of ending.
It's a different sort of ending. Yeah, totally.
I guess we could just hang out still.
Yeah, I mean, we have more notes. Yeah, let's wrap it up, dude.
Dude, guys,
with the handles, man.
You know where to find us. We're all over the place. Bear with us, you guys. We are figuring out the YouTube stuff. We have some technical difficulty stuff because we're not used to doing it. So we're figuring it out. We're going to get you more videos. The last couple episodes all have videos. They're coming up on our YouTube soon. So continue to follow us on YouTube.
Right.
I think it's Who Let You Watch That on YouTube. I need to figure out YouTube as well. Bear with us. I don't understand the algorithm. People have been telling me that. They're like, I can't find you.
Yeah, we've heard that.
Go to Instagram. There's a link there.
There you go.
Boom.
That'll do it.
That'll get you there. Do that. So where you find us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all those places. Who Let You Pod on all those. Send us an email. Tell us what your favorite Cynic song is. Eon Spoke. If you're listening to that, listen to fucking Gordian Knot and all the rest of those motherfuckers. I'm fucking into it. I'm going to twiddle diddle to space this week.
Yep.
I am atmospheric, people.
Yep.
I love it. That was great. You guys follow us on all that stuff. wholetyoupod@gmail.com. Tell us everything. Gabe, send us to the moon, my man.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, never, ever, ever watch a movie unless that movie happens to be The Exorcist. Good night.